evening. This is the I-24 News Evening Edition. I'm Lucy Arish, and these are the headlines. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas tells the New York Times that NATO troops should be responsible for the security of the future Palestinian state and confirms he'll never recognize Israel as a Jewish state. An apparent suicide bomb rocks southern Beirut in an area populated by Christians and Druze. And after much controversy, the Horizon 2020 scientific deal is launched with the European Union and Israel. Can science trump politics? Good evening. 6 months have passed since Israeli-Palestinian negotiations were relaunched under U.S. mediation, and now Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has broken the silence surrounding the peace talks. In a rare interview with Western media, Abbas shared his views on some of the most controversial issues. I-24 News correspondent Charles Biblizer has more.
After 6 months of negotiations, the silence has been broken. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has spoken. In a wide-ranging interview with the New York Times, Abbas offered a window into his mindset, a rare glimpse of his take on the core issues of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. With respect to security, Abbas dropped a bombshell, revealing a willingness to allow an American-led NATO force to patrol a future Palestinian state indefinitely.
For a long time, and wherever they want, not only on the eastern borders, but also on the western borders, everywhere, the third party can stay. They can stay to reassure the Israelis and to protect us.
The scope of this imagined military presence would thus extend to all crossings into neighboring sovereigns, East Jerusalem, and, crucially, the Jordan Valley. The future status of the Jordan Valley has been a major point of contention in negotiations thus far, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly demanding the area remain under long-term Israeli military control. Abbas also touched upon other final status issues, stating that Israeli soldiers could remain in the West Bank for up to 5 years, as opposed to his previous position of 3, that Jewish settlements should be phased out of the new Palestinian state along a similar timetable, that the future state would be demilitarized, and that he would not allow a third intifada to break out. But on another major point of contention, Abbas was less accommodating. When asked about recognizing Israel as the Jewish state, he asserted, quote, "This is out of the question." He then presented a 1948 letter signed by U.S. President Harry Truman in which the words Jewish state were crossed out and replaced by State of Israel. Netanyahu was quick to weigh in.
President Abbas is not willing to recognize Israel as the Jewish state because he knows that without such recognition, there will be no peace agreement. It is absurd to think that in any deal, Israel will recognize the Palestinian state without the other side recognizing the nation of the Jewish people.
Abbas's comments come at a sensitive time, with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry preparing to present a framework of principles for a final peace deal. The Israeli and Palestinian reactions to it will likely determine whether talks continue past the April 29th expiration date. As it stands now, the two parties remain deadlocked. Only time will tell whether Kerry's proposal can bridge the gap.
And joining me is Dimitri Jaani. Mr. Dimitri Jaani, member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council. Good evening. Thank you again for speaking with us.
You're welcome.
So, did President Mahmoud Abbas' proposal came as a surprise to other Fatah officials?
Not at all. The whole concept of having a demilitarized state is pretty much a popular issue. People are for it for many reasons. First of all, we seek to achieve peace, and we believe that by ending the claims, there is no need for an armed forces except for police forces for internal peace. Second thing, we believe that all the money that countries spend on armies and militarizing, we are in desperate need to use it to develop our education and health system and other services to our citizens, rather than having an army that doesn't have a quarrel with anybody, because at that point we would have a peace agreement signed. I won't have any issues with any of our neighbors.
You know, we hear the Mahmoud Abbas not willing to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Why is it such an important thing for President Mahmoud Abbas? After we remember one of the interviews that he gave to Israeli media that said that he's not expecting to come back to any Arab villages that are in Israel. What is with this point that is so specific with President Mahmoud Abbas?
There are points of principle. First of all, this is not an issue that was agreed upon to be discussed as a final status issue. This is an issue that was put forward by Benjamin Netanyahu in order to halt any advancement in the peace process. Second thing, also, if we have recognized, as Palestinians, we have recognized the state of Israel. And that was before Oslo. Now it's turned for the state of Israel to recognize the state of Palestine that was recognized by the United Nations. Now the ball is in Israel's court. Third reason has to do with the 1.2 million Palestinians living in the state of Israel. What would happen to them? What does this mean to them? Fourth, recognizing Israel as a Jewish state goes against our principle as being a secular political system. We recognize states, and they call themselves whatever they want.
Yes,
Another important
Mr.
issue.
Giuliani, I have to finish this conversation because we have more issues on the evening edition. Thank you very much for this phone call with us. And with me now from the Gaza Strip is Isra al-Mudalal, Palestinian government spokeswoman in Gaza. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello.
Hello. How are you? So let's try to think about what the proposal that President Mahmoud Abbas put today. What does the Hamas leadership think about President Abbas' proposal that the future Palestinian state will be a demilitarized state?
This is actually the most dangerous proposal Mahmoud Abbas said, because it's very clear for the Palestinian situation, the results until this moment. Nobody did nomination to Mahmoud Abbas to say this and to be the speaker for all the Palestinian people. This is the right of the refugees to be back to their lands. This is what we say, like a killing to all our rights and to be unrecognized from the occupation. Actually, this is a big waiver for our rights to live, to have our freedom, independence, justice. And in the same time, none of any movements, and also the Palestinian government here in Gaza, did a popular delegate to Mahmoud Abbas to say such of those things as he said.
How does it go with
we are not against the point. As just let me complete this.
Yes.
Because we do not believe what the Israeli occupation can do, because we did trust as much as we can, but with no any other results until this moment.
But I want to ask you something. I want to ask you something, Isra.
Yes.
I want to ask you something. How does it go together with the reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas?
Well, it's so clear. This is a Palestinian issue that had very related to the refugees, the Jerusalem, and the prisoners in the Israeli jail. Sorry. So it's very clear that we cannot have a step forward. And at the same time, you giving much of a hand open to the occupation to have much of a colonial settlement in our lands, actually. And this is something cannot be a stand for the Palestinian issue.
Yes, Isra al-Mudalal, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for this phone call with us. And joining me right now in the studio is Amir Oren. Amir, good evening. Thank you very much for coming again.
Hi, Lucy.
So we just heard Fatah, the Palestinian side, the two sides in the Palestinian government, the Hamas and Fatah. Is that a good proposal to Israel?
Let's backtrack just for a second regarding the Jewish state.
Yes.
And the demilitarized zone that will prevail in the West Bank. What President Abbas said about President Truman in 1948 referred to the fact that on May 14th, as Ben-Gurion was about to declare the state of Israel, At the very last moment, they decided in the Jewish executive that the state will not be named the Jewish state as was in the UN resolution in 1947, but they chose the name Israel. Now, Israel is the equivalent of Palestinian. Jewish would be the equivalent of Arab. So President Abbas certainly has a point. If Israel wanted to call itself the Jewish state 66 years ago, it could have done so, it didn't. So this is a moot point, and surely at the very last moment, when the negotiations are going to break down, President Abbas will very generously concede this point, and Netanyahu will be speechless. Now, demilitarized, of course, the West Bank of the Jordan River under Jordan, under the Hashemite kingdom, was to all effect demilitarized from armor and from air. Internal security forces, yes. Light weapons, yes. But of course, Israel will not withdraw from the West Bank if it does not get assurances that it will not be attacked from the West Bank. So this is logical too. Now, regarding NATO, the North Atlantic Alliance has said many times, speaking with secretaries general throughout the years, they said, first of all, the two sides must invite NATO to do it. Secondly, it should be only when a final peace agreement is signed, not an interim agreement. Yeah. And then, only if NATO doesn't have to fight, is it going to be willing to be there to serve as a sort of a tripwire. Now, it means that if you have in Hebron, you have a multinational force. It's called TIPH, T-I-P-H, between H1 and H2, the Jewish and Arab sectors. You can have a token force just in order to reassure nervous Israelis that they are not alone, but it is not going to be an effective force.
Amir Oren, thank you very much. Of course, we will be discussing this in the next few days. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported today on a new offer to compensate victims of the Turkish flotilla to Gaza, the Navi Marmara, with a sum of $20 million. An agreement between the two countries could finally mark a turnaround in the rocky Mediterranean relationship. I-24 News reporter Uli Shapira has more.
It might be hard to imagine, but not too long ago, Turkey and Israel were the strongest allies around the Mediterranean Sea. In 1996, the Turkish president even paid a visit to Israel, and joint military drills took place on an annual basis. But this partnership began a decline in 2003, when Tayyip Erdogan came to power as Turkey's prime minister. The conservative leader has sharply criticized Israel, mainly on its activity in Lebanon, Gaza, and the West Bank. The relations hit rock bottom in 2010 after the Israeli army tried to take control of the Navi Marmara on its way to Gaza, an aid flotilla that contained members of the IHH organization based in Turkey. 9 activists on the ship lost their lives in the incident, and dozens of others were wounded, including 10 IDF soldiers. The Israeli action on international waters sparked outrage in Turkey, and the relations between the two countries looked unfixable.
By tomorrow, our mutual diplomatic relations will have been downgraded to the second secretary level.
But today, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz announced that a reconciliation between Turkey and Israel is closer than ever, reporting that Israel agreed to compensate the families of the Marmara victims with a total of $20 million. The process began last year after American President Barack Obama encouraged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to call Erdogan and apologize for the Marmara events. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, deeply involved in the region, also chimed in.
We would like to see this relationship get back on track in its full measure.
Even if Israelis and Turks are not expected to join hands together in the streets of Tel Aviv and Istanbul, the compensation deal could mark a new era between the two nations. After all, Israel and Turkey share a long history that goes back to the beginning of the 20th century. But only future will tell what the key Mediterranean region will look like a few years from today.
A recently familiar story out of Lebanon, a large explosion near a gas station in a neighborhood south of Beirut. According to witnesses, at least 2 people were killed. Beirut has seen a series of bomb attacks in recent weeks, part of a spillover from neighboring Syria's civil war. And joining me now is Ali Wakad, Middle East analyst. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So what do we know about today's attack in Beirut?
We know that this attack took place at Shwefat. Shwefat is a Christian Druze neighborhood very close to the southern neighborhood, the big stronghold of Hezbollah. 2 persons were killed, and the very big question, Lucy, whether this attack took place at Shwefat by accident and the suicide bomber was intending to go to the Al-Dahia, to the southern neighborhood, the Shiite one, or he decided to explode himself in this Christian Druze neighborhood, because according to some of my sources in Lebanon to whom I talked this evening, in the last weeks they are identifying that the Lebanese is developing its own agenda, its own internal hostility in separation to the Syrian civil war, meaning that it might be that a civil internal hostility in Lebanon is developing in parallel to what is happening in Syria.
Going to 1975, to the civil war in 1975?
Lucy, this incident took place in a Christian Druze neighborhood and not in the Shiite neighborhood. And some of the jihadist militias are accusing the Druze and the Christian to supporting Bashar Assad regime. All the signs show that the same militia, the same Al-Nusra Front was behind this attack, and that they intended to explode themselves in Al-Dahia, in the southern neighborhood of Beirut. But in case that these assumptions that the kamikaze really wanted to explode himself in this Shwefat neighborhood, it is a very important juncture in the Lebanese question.
Are we talking about a new front in the Middle East? Who knows? Thank you very much, Ali Wakad. Of course, you will be updating us about the subject. And in the humanitarian crisis stemming from Syria's war, both in and outside of Syria, the Yarmouk Palestinian refugee camp exists as a startling example. I-24 News reporter Daniel Ziri on the Damascus population living in a siege.
After more than 200 days of nightmare, Palestinians from the Yarmouk refugee camp in Damascus got some relief. The UN has delivered food assistance over the past few days, and about 450 people were able to leave the area. Most of them could also get medical help. The Yarmouk camp was established by the UN in 1948 in favor of the Palestinians who had fled the first Arab-Israeli war. Throughout the years, it has turned into a residential and commercial neighborhood. In 2012, just after the war had reached the Syrian capital, Yarmouk became a real battlefield. While some Palestinians decided to support the rebels and others chose the side of the Syrian regime. It's been 7 months since the Syrian army put this 2-square-kilometer neighborhood under siege. Since then, nearly 100 people have died of starvation.
We've been trapped here for 7 months. There's been nothing left to eat for 2 months. Before then, we had food at home and we were able to eat. But now we go to sleep and wake up hungry. 1 kilo of rice costs now 15,000 Syrian pounds. Who owns that kind of money?
We used to eat olive oil mixed with spices. We didn't have anything else to eat. The Free Syrian Army has food and water, but they never handed out food to anyone except their own families. They never gave food to any civilian.
According to UN estimates, around 6,000 Palestinian families are still besieged in Yarmouk. Around 2,600 food parcels have been distributed so far.
The numbers that we have reached so far are relatively small in comparison to the larger population that is in need of help. We believe the entire population of Yarmouk at the moment requires help.
The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees have called the Syrian authorities to try to allow humanitarian aid to reach Yarmouk on a consistent and regular basis.
Yes. And coming up on this evening edition, a report on EU corruption reveals a staggering $162 billion lost annually. And after much controversy, the Horizon 2020 scientific deal is launched with the European Union and Israel. Can science trump politics? Welcome back. A startling report by the European Commission says that corruption costs the European economy around 120 billion euros per year, equal to its annual budget. More from I24 News correspondent Merav Seville.
The European Commission announced on Monday that corruption costs the European economy about 120 billion euros a year, and the problem plagues nearly half of the companies involved in business in Europe.
There are estimations that corruption costs in the European Union is no less than 120 billion euros each year, and that is the equivalent of an EU annual budget. Studies suggest that up to a quarter of the value of public contracts in EU member states may be lost in corrupt practices, and this, of course, is very damaging to the citizens.
Corruption is evident across the bloc. 43% of companies see it as an issue, an annual cost that is almost the size of the entire Romanian economy.
A large number, you will see all the details in the Eurobarometer, of companies say that actually the level of corruption in that or that country hinders us from making investment or did not allow us to make a proper public procurement offer. We might not have got it anyway, but at least to make it the proper, transparent way. And that's why we lose a lot of money.
According to the report, it's not only companies who view corruption as a widespread problem. European Union citizens also view it as common. And lately, a growing number of people think it is worsening, listing Greece, Italy, Lithuania, Spain, and the Czech Republic as those guiltiest of corruption.
It almost wasn't, but today Israel and the European Union officially kicked off their Horizon 2020 scientific agreement. Israel had previously threatened to pull out of the deal after the EU published guidelines banning the funding of all Israeli entities across the Green Line. I24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev takes a closer look.
While the headlines in Israel are occupied with news of a boycott threat, Israeli scientists and researchers had at least one reason to celebrate today. After months of negotiations, Israel and the European Union finally launched the Horizon 2020 agreement. Hundreds of scientists and businessmen convened to launch the prestigious 6-year multi-million science cooperation treaty.
I think it's very important that science is not constrained by political considerations, and therefore science needs to be able to be globalized and work in a truly free international environment.
Horizon 2020 is the EU's largest research and innovation program with funding of 80 billion euros. Israel is the only non-European country that was invited to join the program as a full partner. But during the last year, it has become the subject of contempt between the right-wing Israeli government and the EU, following the Brussels Anti-Settlement Directive, which bans European funding over the 1967 Green Line. Only after entering crisis mode was a compromise reached and a diplomatic rift prevented, making it possible for Israeli institutes to participate in the project.
I don't think there is an issue here of boycott, or there's an issue here of... We made it quite clear what were our conditions for the partnership with Israel in the field of science and innovation, but also in other areas. We made it quite clear. It's about the borders, it's about the respect of the borders. There's now only one thing, is indeed to let the scientists and the innovators do their work, and politicians get out of the way.
Brussels' discontent with Israel's policy wasn't mentioned at the event today, and the word settlement wasn't in the air. Rather, science, innovation, R&D, and high-tech.
Scientists are always not only parts of their own country, but also parts of the International Republic of Science, if you'd like. So I'm truly hopeful and also optimistic that the collaboration will continue.
In the past months, European warnings to Israel have increased, but the EU is intent on showing Israel the carrot that goes with the stick, and is offering an unprecedented economic benefit package if Israel reaches a final status deal with the Palestinians. The Horizon 2020 agreement is just an example, Brussels explains, of the horizons Israel can reach if it abides by the international community's demands. It may not convince Israeli politicians, but at least for the scientists, it seems like a good deal.
And in Thailand, despite a relatively peaceful election, the country's political paralysis is expected to continue for months as anti-government demonstrators vow to keep up their campaign against the Prime Minister. I24 News correspondent Shahal has the latest.
The ongoing political conflict in Thailand shows no sign of ending. Elections passed relatively peacefully yesterday, but over 6 million people weren't able to vote, and today protesters marched downtown to a government office just outside of Bangkok, surrounding the meeting place of Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and 2 senior ministers in their continuing efforts to topple the administration.
Thai people were against yesterday's election. We disagree with this unfair and unjust election. They are buying votes. People want reform. That is why yesterday's election saw the largest reduction in voter numbers in Thai history.
Following election disruptions in 18% of the country's districts, the government is now facing the prospect of months of paralysis, protests and complex legal challenges. According to the Election Commission, an estimated 46% of voters participated in the election, a far lower turnout than the 75% in the 2011 vote that brought Yingluck to power. But no results are expected to be announced anytime soon, meaning little change to the uneasy status quo, with Yingluck remaining caretaker prime minister for weeks.
During this weakening administration, she will be more vulnerable to attacks, to criticisms, and also to perhaps decisions from the anti-corruption commissions and the Constitutional Court.
Even though Yingluck's ruling party is certain to win, not enough candidates have been able to register to provide a quorum in the new parliament, a process that can take up to 6 months.
We'll see by-elections, re-elections, and a rolling elections, series of elections for the next 3 to 6 months. And this means that no elected government. It will mean that the dead end will persist.
Meanwhile, the probable clashes between the Bangkok-based middle class and the mostly poor rural supporters of Shinawatra will continue. On a positive note, Thailand can mark a rise in the country's main share index after the voting tempted investors to buy back large caps such as Krong Thai Bank. Still, experts believe the current political paralysis will result in far-reaching economic consequences, causing Thailand to lose its position as an attractive investment haven, leaving it in its dysfunctional political limbo.
Preliminary results in the El Salvador presidential elections show that a former left-wing guerrilla leader took a strong early lead, but could still face a runoff against a conservative rival whose campaign agenda was to deploy the army to fight powerful street gangs. Salvador Sanchez Cerén, a rebel commander during the Civil War of 1979 to 1992, became a top leader of the now ruling leftist party. He reached 49.2% of the vote and his rival 39%. With vote counting still underway, Sanchez Cerén declared an early victory. And in a story usually heard out of the United States, an armed student entered a Moscow school earlier today and took more than 20 teenagers hostage in an incident that claimed the lives of a policeman and a teacher. The hostage taker was a student of a school on the northern outskirts of Moscow. The crisis sparked fresh security fears in Russia ahead of the start of the Winter Olympic Games in Sochi on Friday. And we're going to Hollywood has begun to bid farewell to one of its most appreciated stars, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who apparently gave way to drug abuse on Sunday, ending a remarkable and still promising career. I24 News cultural correspondent Shahal Peled on the life and times of a unique performer.
This is that scene, and I think they have those scenes in movies because they're true.
Unexpected news hit the entertainment world yesterday when Philip Seymour Hoffman was found dead in his New York apartment in an apparent drug overdose.
Are you afraid that we might discover that our past has been reshapen?
The 46-year-old actor has always been open about his struggles with drugs and alcohol, but spent the last 23 years sober. His drug problems resurfaced last year, and after checking himself into a detox facility, it seemed as if the storm was over. After all, Hoffman was bound to take part in major future projects, including a return to the director's chair after 14 years and filming the next installment of the smash hit trilogy, The Hunger Games.
It's a tremendous loss because he's one of the great actors of our generation and of his generation, and amazingly versatile. I don't think there's anything he couldn't do. He did comedic roles, tragic roles, and everything in between.
First gaining recognition for his supporting work in numerous films, both small independent features as well as mega blockbusters, from Scent of a Woman to Boogie Nights, The Big Lebowski, Magnolia and Almost Famous. Hoffman landed the title role in Capote, for which he won multiple awards, including the prized Academy Award for Best Actor.
There's a thoroughness and a specificity that you have to look for every day. Make sure you're really covering all your boundaries in that story. That's very demanding, and there's a lot of pressure to it, but very satisfying to be able to go to that. You have to work every day, and you kind of get in it in a way that you're not allowed to get in it if you're a supporting character. Yeah.
He was also a great actor and director in the theatre, with 3 Tony nominations and a much applauded performance in the Broadway revival of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. But what probably most fascinated people about his performance is how normal he seemed to be. A chubby, non-attractive figure by Hollywood standards who became a star, and an actor whose characters, whether heroes or villains, captured our attention and now will remain this master's legacy.
Yes, the death of a big star. For many, the idea of matchmaking and arranged marriages can seem from the distant past, but for many communities, including the Jewish ultra-Orthodox, it's a time-honored tradition and the path marriage. Tonight, on Inside Magazine, a look inside how it works.
The highlight in the lives of every young ultra-Orthodox person is the matchmaking. Yechezkel Varsha was a devoted Chassid who went through a faith crisis caused by the matchmaking process. He's a philosopher at heart and, like many of his friends, was thrown into the world of matchmaking without almost any preparation and without knowing anything about the experiences that awaited him.
I have no idea what love is. We don't have the right tools. We don't even know how to start thinking about it. Do you know what a woman's body is like? Do you know how it feels to be attracted to it? It just happens. You know something is there, but you don't know what it is. So how should we deal with it?
Meirav Lerner returns to the matchmaking arena the second time in her life with new insights.
I'm Meirav. I'm 27. I have 2 law degrees. I got married at the age of 18 and a half. We split up when I was 19. I got divorced at the age of 21, and that's it. Now I'm looking for my soulmate.
Economic status is highly important in the ultra-Orthodox society. Everything is decided in advance. The parents deal with the money issue when they come to see me. They tell me what they want, what they expect, how much does he earn a month, whether she moves in with him, that he should buy her presents every month, that they travel abroad once a year.
In Haredi society, the matchmaking process is very selective and operates according to strict rules. Each sector has different rules regarding the number of meetings, meeting places, and even the length of the dates. The purpose of all these rigorous laws is to ensure that the match is right and will quickly and efficiently establish a new family.
Wow. It's like a magic touch, as if the world was made of love, and the whole world knew I'm in love.
After several fruitless dates with different girls, Chizki finally finds the love of his life.
I know it's her. I know it's a match from heaven. She's my destiny, my basheret.
And joining me now is the host of the Tube magazine, Jason Danino Holt. How are you? All good?
Fine, Lucy. How are you?
So, Facebook is celebrating a new app?
Yeah, Facebook, everybody's trying to kill Facebook. It's saying that it's dying, that it's irrelevant, that something's going to take over, that it's the end of the Facebook era. Yeah. Well, today they're launching a new app called Paper that's going to change everything. The buzz is super positive. Let's see a little bit of how it looks like, and then we'll talk about it.
Stories come in all shapes and sizes. They can be told with words or with a single picture. And how each story is told is as important as the story itself.
Big buzz, big advertisement.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. You know, nowadays, Facebook, most people use it as a cell phone, contacting people. The way you see news or content, or the way you post content, is not really the most efficient way. And now they changed everything. The algorithm, the way it looks, the way it feels, the way you post. And, well, you just said hello to your new newsfeed. And I think it looks amazing.
Looks amazing. It actually looks amazing. And I have it. Sometimes I find it very hard to say good things about Facebook. But let's go to Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Super Bowl was last night, and as you know, only sport addicts like the Super Bowl for, well, the sports itself. Most of the people like the halftime show, the performance, the music. Last night was Bruno Mars, and the Super Bowl commercials. Now, what's interesting about this year is that the commercial doesn't air anymore only on the night itself. The minute you know that you are part of the Super Bowl commercials, you put your commercial online days earlier, and then you become viral. And now the competition is not only who did the best commercial, is who's the commercial that made the most hits on YouTube and was most talked about. We had Scarlett Johansson and her whole Soda Stream and all the scandal buzz, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I think
the winner is?
And the winner is, well, there were two commercials that we liked. There's the Chobani one, the yogurt one, where you see a bear eating yogurt.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's really, really cute.
It's very nice.
And there's the Budweiser one of a dog being very friendly with a horse.
Oh.
It's super cute as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least?
Well, last but it gives me such a headache. It's a new game.
What?
Yeah.
Please explain.
Okay, it's called Flappy Bird.
Okay.
And there's a genre of games that are called very, very bad games, frustrating games, badly designed games that for no reason at all become hugely, hugely popular. This stupid game has 2 million downloads in the last 24 hours. Why? I don't know. I think the thing is that it's so frustrating, you can't do more than 2-3 points if you're really, really good.
Jason, do you know how many times I cursed when I started playing this game?
And exactly this energy is what made it so popular, because people want to curse with one another, and when you did 3 points, you want to share it, so everybody shares how bad they are at this game, and some Korean guy, unknown, is now becoming very, very rich.
Jason Danina Hall, thank you very much for this.
You're welcome.
Yes, still ahead on this I-24 News Evening Edition. The daily debate boycotting Israel's Secretary of State John Kerry said that this could be the result of not reaching a peace agreement. Is Israel on the road to economic isolation, or is it just a drop in the bucket? And on One in the summer of 2011, hundreds of thousands of Israelis demonstrated in the streets against the high cost of living. We sit down with Daphne Leaf, a controversial leader of this struggle. Don't go anywhere. Don't play Fluffy Birds. 2 minutes break and I'll be back.